Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Dave, did you know wherever Hoosiers travel, they no longer talk of weather? That's right. Indiana has a new state bird. Happy birthday to Larry Joe Bird, who turned 66 today. Dave, I pose this question to you.
Yes.
Is he still in your top 10 of greatest of all time?
Wow, that's a really tough question, but I'm going to have to answer to the affirmative right now off the top of my head. Is Larry Bird still in my top 10? I'd have to put him there right now. His career truncated by injury, started late because he didn't go to college on the right timeline that many guys did. But yeah, Chad, for the prime peak years of Larry Bird's career, he was about as good as anybody that's ever laced him up. He reminds me of Andrew Luck, who had a longer career with more championships.
Yeah, okay.
Came out of college.
I never looked at it like that, but okay.
Everybody thought he was going to be the shit. He was. When he played, he was awesome. Did he get injured? Did he have his career hampered and shortened? 13 seasons for Bird. But again, he started late and he ended early, where a lot of guys, especially now, would play 18, 20, 25 years. Look at LeBron James. Guy might never retire.
Yeah, last night, 21 points, 17 rebounds, had a block, had a steal.
But the
in
Lakers
a loss.
Lakers fucked me last night. Thanks a lot,
Donovan Mitchell fucked you. He had a huge game last night.
Actually, the guy that really fucked me, and Joey Miller wanted me to talk about this morning, was Big Pussy Bumpin' Cerro, a.k.a. Street Clothes. Street Clothes had the sniffles.
He had the flu.
Of 101. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me just say this. When you're compared to the greats of all time, we mentioned Larry Bird. Larry Bird would have played without a spleen. As a matter of fact, Larry Bird couldn't even practice during the Team USA run over in Barcelona. Larry Bird couldn't practice. He was so banged up. Michael Jordan, whatever that game was, the flu game, the hungover game, the food poisoning game, whatever, he was still able to gut it out. When we see Anthony Street Clothes Davis, a.k.a. Big Pussy Bumpin' Cerro, I just wonder, really? You started the game. You figured you just couldn't go after 8 minutes. So fuck Anthony Davis, and thanks a lot for ruining my bet last night. I mean, really, seriously, fuck that guy, and thanks for ruining my bet.
The sad part about that is he's had a stretch here for about 10 games where he's dominated and has looked like the best player in the NBA.
Fair.
And then things like this come along, and he is soft. I mean, Charles Barkley calls him Street Clothes for a reason. And I think it's an awesome nickname. But he is soft. He's soft. There's just no two ways about it. And for guys like us that admired players of the 80s and 90s, it was a different era. There's still some tough guys that are in the league now. There's not there isn't tough guys. But that was commonplace, where now it's more commonplace to reserve minutes and, take time off, and I don't feel good and I got a tweak in my leg or I have the sniffles or whatever. You see that more than you ever did before.
Yeah, it's really, look, it's hard to say that guys aren't tough now, because I look at, Giannis, I look at these guys on a daily basis. They're playing at higher loads with more athleticism than they've ever played before, right? That's one thing that is happening, and careers are taking even longer and more expansive turns. But there is something about that gritty toughness of this is Wisconsin working on me, Chad. This is the lunch pail society. You get your lunch pail, you go to work, you do it every day. Doesn't matter how much you had to drink the night before. Again, this is Wisconsin. Doesn't matter if you're sick or not. This is Wisconsin. And so I feel, as a Wisconsinite, that I'm looking at this through the lens now of a Midwesterner. And I'm like, dude, pick up your lunch pail and go to fucking work. When I think about Giannis and these guys, when the Bucks give nights off to Giannis and Chris Middleton or Bobby Portis or whomever, it's on the second of a back-to-back. They're playing the long game. It's not that Giannis couldn't play. It's just for purposes of what we're calling load management. Okay, he's not going to suit up for the full 82, but if pressed, Giannis would play unless there was something that was categorically wrong with him where he could not play and it wasn't part of a pre-designed plan. He would play. And I just looked at Anthony Davis last night in a national TV spot, Chad, where I had the Lakers not +4, which I'd seen earlier in the day, but I picked them up +5.5. I was getting another 1.5 on this one. And still Anthony Davis, after 8 minutes and 1 point, decided to just call it. And I watched him leave the floor, and LeBron just kind of looks at him, and You know, this is why I'm glad to be a Bucks fan and not a Lakers fan. Would you want to have a player that on your team, every time he hits the ground, every time you look up, you're praying and hoping, crossing your fingers that he's not injured irreparably, possibly this time?
Well, yeah, and then as we go back to the GOAT debate, and this is why Michael's usually at the top. He had the flu, had 100 and whatever degree temperature, was puking. He only dropped 63 points, in a playoff game. Anthony Davis, him and his eyebrow go sit down after 8 minutes with 1 point. So
yeah,
it's just maybe it's just a different time. Maybe we're just old fuddy-duddies, but that's why I'm not a Bucks fan. I'm a Celtics fan.
Sure.
As you know. But I do admire players and the way that they play the game. And Giannis, that's why I really like Giannis, because he is a lunch pail guy. Actually, that whole team is. It's just not just Giannis, but he's obviously the leader of that team. And he's a guy that comes to work every day, and he wants to be the best. And again, with his attitude of believing he's a role player and all of those things, he fits in really well in that area. And the thing is, when those guys, when Milwaukee won a championship, it's not easy to not only acquire stars, but to maintain and retain those stars. For the fact that they did that is quite an accomplishment. It really is.
Well, I think the city of Milwaukee and really the ownership of the Bucks now, the new ownership after Senator Herb Kohl sold the team and this new ownership group came into play. This ownership team has gone all in on not just the team, but the city and the surrounding area of the Fiserv Forum. So downtown Milwaukee has been transformed and reshaped in large part because of this Bucks team. And you're right, for a team like Milwaukee to retain a star like Giannis, say what you will about Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, those are always guys they can get. But Giannis Antetokounmpo, for them to re-sign him, that was a boon. It really was. Now, Giannis may, Chad, in the next couple of years, actually enter what we could consider a verified GOAT debate. I mean, this is something that he's only 28 years old as of yesterday. At some point soon, Giannis could enter a verified GOAT debate. At this particular point in time, though, we still can't put him up amongst the all-time greats. He's getting there, but he's not quite there yet.
One more chip gets him there, I think.
Totally agree. You and I had a robust conversation yesterday after the show about the GOAT in the NBA, and I want to talk about that coming up this morning. We've also got to talk about the Wisconsin Badgers, Chad, who had a big day yesterday, both on the football field and on the basketball court, and I will once again let you know that I shit the bed with my daily play. It's the Sports Carnival broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Like Eric from La Crescent says, suck it up, Buttercup. We're back in about 60 seconds. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Do you have a wedding, anniversary party, or bat mitzvah coming up in your life? Then you need Hey Duda DJ services featuring Neil Duda, the Midwest Eminem.
No doubt about it, I'm hammered, and that's every day. Brand's so cloudy, dog.
Dropping sick beats while you enjoy your treats. No party is too big or too small. Quinceañeras, graduations, ice cream socials, or cocktail parties. Whatever the celebration, Hey Duda is rocking the foundation.
Here we go again, back with all our friends. Here comes the pain.
Neil Duda.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios, this is the one and only Sports Carnival. The problem with making things idiot-proof is a better idiot always seems to come along. Speaking of, now here's your host, Dave Carney. That was a joke. I'm just kidding.
I resemble that remark. All right, Chad, I'm going to go ahead and take a very professional turn here and say hello to some of the folks that have said hello to us already this morning. I'll start off with our good friends over at Preferred Insurance, downtown La Crosse on 5th Street, Tony Rausa and Brian Sandmeyer. We saw them reaching out this morning. They said hello from the Preferred Insurance team. Good morning, fellas. Great to see you aboard again. Preferred Insurance, the official insurance provider of the Sports Carnival, auto, home, business, flood insurance. You got to go to Preferred Insurance. The Midwest Mortgage team, Mike Garcia, Todd Vercruzzi, they haven't checked in yet, but you know what they've got coming up on Friday, Chad?
No.
They've got an epic pajama party.
That's
right. I said it. An epic pajama party. I did ask Mike Garcia this morning on private text if a pair of boxer shorts and a bathrobe would actually work as pajamas, because I sleep in the buff. Pajamas for me have always been like extra clothes. For what reason? Not sure. But if there is going to be a good pajama party, inquiring minds want to know if a pair of silken boxer shorts and perhaps a smoking jacket or a bathrobe would work as effective pajamas. I see Jimmy Namath is checking in here, and Jimmy actually checked in. I believe it was from a different platform on Facebook, and said, good morning from the Stone Distribution crew. Well, good morning out there, guys and gals. Our friends over at the Recovery Room, of course, Chad Power us here in the Trauma Center studios from coast to coast. I was just asking some of our audience members here on our chat line if they wanted to meet up for an impromptu Bucks game tonight at the Recovery Room. I'll be waiting patiently for your responses. Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate, Chad, came over yesterday, pounded a sign into my yard. We go live with this listing in Stoddard, Wisconsin on Thursday. You can't come over and look at it until Thursday, but if you're in the market for a new house and you think that you want to live where a celebrity lived, like me in Stoddard, then you can come out here. But remember, go see Kyle Cable at One Trust Real Estate, set up that appointment. And of course, our new friends at BetUS, Chad. We talked to BetUS yesterday. We were a little bit confused about how we were supposed to sign everybody up on BetUS, and Todd Vercruzzi, the Coos, actually prompted us with this first question. So here's how simple it is. You go to betus.com.pa, and when you hit the button join, you're going to have to fill out just a little contact information, your name, your email address, and then you're going to go to a second page, right? There's one page where it's your contact information. The second page will ask you, how did you hear about BetUS? All you do is click podcast and put in the word Carnival, 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 right there. Now, when you make a deposit, okay, so you go to make your deposit, because we were talking about this, Chad, the 125% deposit match in the sports book, it'll prompt you with another promo code. It'll say, hey, promo code when you make a deposit. Simply put in Carnival again right there, and you'll get yourself a 125% sports book deposit match. Chad, for a number of different folks that sign up through BetUS that don't sign up through us, they wouldn't get the full 125% deposit match in the sports book. They would get a sports book plus a casino match. But of course, we're doing the sports betting here, so that's why we get you the full 125% through BetUS on the sports book. So again, go online, betus.com.pa, and sign up using the promo code Carnival. If you have any issues, just hit me up on our Facebook group page, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on even Snapchat now, Chad, because we are at the Sports Carney across another social media platform. I recently got us signed up for Snapchat. Have you ever been on to this thing called Snapchat?
Snapchat. I'm familiar with it, but I've never actually been on Snapchat. No. I was on Snatch Chat, but that's a whole different platform.
That's when you were in Vegas.
That was a different platform, and I was only on for about 4.5 minutes, and then I was off.
Wow. Well, again, thank you for putting up the banner here in 4.5 minutes, man. That was the best 4.5 minutes probably of, well, anyways, your week that week, I suppose.
Yes. Hey, real quick. So I mentioned it was Larry Bird's birthday. I'd be remiss not to mention two other Hall of Famers, two different sports, also today's birthday. Johnny Bench, his birthday, and Terrell Owens, also his birthday. And, of course, Giannis' birthday was yesterday. So that means that a lot of people in the month of March are having sex, apparently, is what it sounds like. A lot of athletes' moms were getting hammered in March.
You know, that's interesting. I wonder if it has anything to do with the celebratory nature, you know, of just, I mean, I'm trying to think about like where we are.
It's Pearl Harbor Day too. Sorry.
Yeah, but I was thinking about the, you know, so here we are in December. So this is, you know, March. I'm thinking spring, the celebratory nature of spring, the revitalization, the rebirth. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Good call. Thank you to Mike Byers. And I'm glad that you mentioned this. Mike Byers, our favorite Texan in Wisconsin, says it's National. I think that means Pearl Harbor Remembrance. It says Park Harbor Remembrance Day, but I think I know what he was talking about.
Yeah, Park Harbor's a different incident that was a lot smaller.
It's kind of like
Might involved actually, as Thomas is checking him. I think that's involved a squirrel. That was a squirrel incident.
See, I thought it was going to be the Gulf of J.K. Rowling's, or maybe it was the Gulf of Tolkien.
Yeah, Tolkien instead of Tonkin. Yeah,
exactly.
That got us into Vietnam. That was all. Okay, that's a whole other thing.
Just a little Lord of the Rings reference there. For
I
us.
like it.
Coming up on Friday, Chad, we're really lucky to be joined for the first time on the Sports Carnival by Coach Kent Dernbach of the University of Wisconsin Lacrosse's men's hoops team. The men's hoops team is now ranked number 3 in the nation. They're undefeated right now and are playing some incredible basketball. Really excited to talk to Coach Dernbach on Friday. But this morning, I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this Badgers news before we got into the great GOAT debate, because we saw something happen yesterday that I didn't expect to happen, and that was Jim Leonhard actually stepping away from the University of Wisconsin after a day in which it was reported that he was leaning towards staying with the university under the new leadership of Coach Fickell.
Yeah, what happened?
This is a great question. I don't know exactly what happened, Chad. I do have a poll question, however, on our Twitter feed and our Facebook group page about what we think Jim Leonhard is going to do next. Will he be a coach in the NFL? Will he be a head coach in college, or a coordinator? But Jim Leonhard said on Twitter yesterday, quote, "It has been an honor to coach these young men. Thank you to all the fans who supported us along the way on Wisconsin." He's out. So Jim Leonhard's going to stay through the bowl game, and then he's gone. So let me ask you the poll question that we've got at the Sports Carney on Twitter and on our Facebook group page. What do you think is next for this guy? Does he go to the NFL, take a defensive coordinator job, which he was offered last year by the likes of the Green Bay Packers? Does he go and become a head coach somewhere in college football, or does he become a defensive coordinator at another stop? What do you think?
I think he more than likely ends up still becoming a coordinator somewhere else, probably in the college ranks, I would think. I don't think he has enough tenure as a head coach, enough coaching experience overall, probably to get a job that he's looking for. You know what I mean? I think it would be a lateral. Well, maybe not a lateral move, unless he goes to a smaller school. Maybe how about this? So Deion Sanders is leaving Jackson State to go to Colorado. Maybe he goes for that job. I'm not going to say he's going to get that job.
You mean Jackson State?
Yeah.
A historically black college? No, he's not getting that job.
Right. Well, I don't know.
He's not getting that job.
I don't know how all this stuff works nowadays, but what I'm saying is maybe not that specific school, but maybe a smaller school head coaching job, or either a coordinator job in college, or possibly the NFL. I doubt the NFL is going to be calling.
So the NFL called last year. Again, it was just the Packers, right? Because Jim Leonhard's got ties to Wisconsin, obviously, being a Badger star.
Barry's out and he's in.
I mean, listen, it's possible. I'm looking at our Facebook group page right now, and we're getting a lot of votes on this. 50% say the NFL, 25% apiece say college head coach, chat, or college coordinator. Over on Twitter, let me check out the Twitter feed. Sorry, I bounced around here. On Twitter, 44.5% are saying the NFL, 11% for a college head coach, and 44% for a college coordinator. So it feels like the coordinator spot in college and or a coordinator spot in the NFL is where at least our audience members are thinking he goes. Look, I don't know either, because as a guy that just was an interim tagged coach who did pretty good, but still lost the battle of the axe to Minnesota, what do you really have as a resume as a head coach, right? Like what's your actual resume? As a coordinator, you can look at yourself and say, hey, I've led some, top 15 college defenses. Does that translate into the NFL? I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. I guess for me, I was just surprised after we had talked about Jim Leonhard staying around. I was just surprised to hear that he was going to be out. Now, last night, this wasn't as much of a surprise to some as it was to me, but this team just continues to play really good quality basketball. The Wisconsin Badgers defeated number 13 Maryland at the Kohl Center in Wisconsin, Chad, 64-59.
Yeah.
The Badgers were dogs by about 5.5 points. I didn't know how to play this game yesterday, but Chucky Hepburn, the kid that I talked about just the other day, who was in his sophomore season, had 13. Stephen Crowell added 12. And again, Wisconsin, this is a team, and I can't remember exactly how many wins. I want to say it's 106 wins for the University of Wisconsin as an unranked team against ranked teams. That's the most in the history of college basketball. For wins against an AP ranked top 25 team when you're not a ranked team, Wisconsin last night, and this, of course, is over the total history of their program, but has notched its 106th victory over a team that's ranked when they're not ranked. So I guess some people were less surprised about this than I was, but this was a big win for Wisconsin. And I wouldn't be surprised, guys and gals, to see the Badgers edge into the top 25 now. I mean, they got beat by Kansas by a point on Thanksgiving. They beat USC. They've had some quality wins. The Badgers beat Marquette, who had been recently on a hot streak, had beaten the likes of Baylor. So I think Wisconsin, when the new top 25 comes out, could find themselves in the top 25. And if not, hedging just right outside of that.
I was flipping around last night and I caught part of that game going into halftime. I think they were up 31-26 or something along those lines. It was somewhat of a low scoring game.
Yeah.
But that's kind of in their wheelhouse, right? They kind of want to they kind of want to play that ball control. And then you're going to have to answer this for me because it sticks in basketball in Wisconsin. So I flipped past and I saw another basketball game and it said Wisconsin. I'm like, against Sioux Falls. What is the Wisconsin Herd? What league is that?
The Wisconsin Herd is the G League.
Oh, that is G League. That's what I thought.
So you were watching NBA TV.
There was 3 people, I think, in the stands. It was, I mean, it was empty. And they got their ass kicked by the Sioux Falls Force, I believe they're called.
They must have been in Sioux Falls because if they were in Oshkosh, I guarantee you that place would have been rocking.
Oh.
The arena that they have for the Wisconsin Herd in Oshkosh is amazing. As a matter of fact, La Crosse, Wisconsin, because we have this, it's called the La Crosse Center. It almost would be like the Yakima Sun Kingdom. Okay. We have the Sun Dome. So we have the La Crosse Center and it's right on the river. Beautiful. It just went through a $30 million renovation. And there were talks that the Wisconsin Herd could possibly come here. It just never matriculated. And they built a new stadium or an arena, I guess, for them in Oshkosh. No, if it was in Oshkosh, it would have been great. But that's who that is. The Wisconsin Herd are the Bucks G League team. You might run across a Wisconsin Green Bay game on at some point. There's the University of, well, I think Wisconsin Green Bay is Division I. It's a low Division I, but that's a D1. So you might see a couple of those other teams out there.
Yeah, I think they lost 80. It was 100-80. It was a 20-point beatdown. And I mean, it wasn't 3 people. It was probably 15-20. It looked like, I mean, you know what I mean? It was one of those, I'm like, what is this? And it didn't say G League anywhere, but I knew it wasn't college. And I was thinking that's what it was. So we still have the Sun Kings here, but they're not in the G League. They're in some other league. And I don't remember what that league is.
Right.
Yeah,
so
I believe so.
That was a CBA team, right? So the Kings was a CBA team. Here in La Crosse, we had the Catbirds, and we also had, there was one other team. God damn it. Why can't I think of it? It was the Catbirds, and there was another team. One of our listeners will help us out with this one. But that's something that a lot of folks around here have never lost the flavor and passion of. As a matter of fact, Mark Davis, and you recall that name, Mark Davis, he was a player in the CBA. He's the father of Jordan Davis, Johnny Davis, and the other Davises that are coming up through the high school ranks right now. That's one of the reasons this area got so good in basketball so quick, because a lot of the CBA players just stayed. Once they came here and they played their ball here, they stayed. And they just figured, hey, this is a great place to, set up shop. And they were right, because it's beautiful. And now we've got basketball talent oozing out of our pores. It's fantastic.
Apparently it's the Bobcats.
The Bobcats. That's right. It was the Catbirds and the Bobcats. What was that? Let me go back to Morning Wood's text here.
I got it.
Okay. So Morning Wood says, per his sources. Okay. And I love this because sources, this is Jimmy
source
Jimmer's
close to Morning Wood.
A source close to Morning Wood, which could be
could be
I don't know what that source would be, but per my
Penthouse, maybe.
Fickle wants Jimmy and Mike Tressel to be co-defensive coordinators and run a 3-3-5 defense. Jimmy ran a 3-4 and didn't want the alignment or the co-title. Wow, if that's true, that's kind of a slap in the face then, because that's Fickle saying, I'll keep you on, but I don't trust you. I got to bring in a co-defensive coordinator.
It does seem weird that from one day to another, it's, I'm going to stay and I'm excited to stay. And, and obviously all your players on defense and all the guys that you help recruit and you had control of the team. They're all excited. They feel better. Okay, this is going to be an easier transition. We've got a new coach in. This will help smooth things out. And then the next day, I'm out. This kind of makes sense. Who knows if this is exactly true, but I'm sure sources close to Morning Wood wouldn't lie or make things up. So it's not fake news. This actually could be this. Who knows? This may be it. It sounds more plausible than just all of a sudden you go street clothes and decide not to play.
Right. Yeah, because let's just say you got the sniffles while you're playing basketball and you're like, that's it, I'm calling it. No, it is interesting. Jason Breacher, P1 Breacher says this. There's been a bunch of misreporting from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. One guy in particular, can't remember his name, but came out with an apology regarding Leonard. What does that mean? Is that because the reporting was, I think I'm picking up what Breacher's putting down. The misreporting must have been that Jim Leonard was going to stay, right? Like that was the misreporting we're talking about, guys, that Jim Leonard was going to stay. Listen, to be fair, I haven't followed the narrative of Jim Leonard too closely once they hired Fickell, because I assumed immediately, Chad, that meant that Jim Leonard was gone, right? When you've got an interim tagged coach that took over for a guy in Paul Christ who had been with the program for 8 years, 9 years. When you get that guy out, I just figured it was going to be gone. He would be gone. Jesus. You know what, Portland? This is the kind of stuff that we're glad we have a non-FCC regulated program so that you can share. He's like, I'm not sure how Morning Wood's tube sock would have heard anything from the nightstand. You know what? That's a great point. I'm kidding. Morning Wood might have actually talked to somebody. He hangs around the Kohl Center quite a bit. I mean, he's down there stalking relentlessly some of these Badger volleyball players. His daughter plays volleyball. So her there to see some of these games.
One video from the locker room, and now he's stalking the volleyball team. That's great.
Well, not just one video. There was a couple of, instances like, Taylor Swift, like outside of a residence, behind I'm kidding. Joe V says, don't forget the lacrosse Showtime. Dude, nobody remembers the lacrosse Showtime. So this was a joke that like one of these ABA teams. Do you remember that shit back in Vegas? And we talked to them at CBS. They had this fake ABA team, and they were playing at like the West Las Vegas Rec Center, the Doolittle Rec Center down the street from Doolittle Rec Center, where if you made it out alive, you were considered 50% luckier than the remainder of humanity. Okay. They had this ABA team at the Doolittle Rec Center. The lady that quote unquote owned the team, I met with her, and actually our good friend John Denton at the time, we went and met with them and started talking about what the ABA was going to do. In 2 weeks' time, we get an email from this chick, like the foreign national from Nigeria, asking us for money. She's all of a sudden trapped in another country and needs us to send funds so she can get back. When this ABA team, the Showtime, came to town, they asked to be on my show, and I was like, dude, no. This is not a thing. I know this is a joke, and we're not going to promote it under any circumstance, under any auspices. They tried a second season. I think they played in an underground church rec room or something like that.
Hey, you got to give him an A for effort.
I guess.
Yeah.
How about a W for wasting time? Could we give them that?
I don't even recall of that. I mean, that's how, I mean, it wasn't really on my radar, or I don't remember it. One of the two.
Well, we never brought it to your attention because, Chad at that time, he was important. He had a pretty big job. And so we couldn't come into your office just willy-nilly bringing bullshit. Like if we were coming to you with something, it better be ready to hit the air, and it better be ready for something that you could produce. Otherwise, what are we talking about this for?
Oh, you're talking about when we were at Kicks at
CBS.
At CBS. Okay. I'm sorry.
That's why I'm saying this was a long time ago, but
this is in the Wayback Machine.
Indeed. I just remember that was my first interaction with this new ABA, which is not the Dr. J ABA by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, we'll never remember the lacrosse Showtime, but thank you, Jovi. That was funny. EJ from Turtle Stack is checking in here. He's like, at least Bango can finish around the rim. Oh God, these missed layups drive me nuts. So he must be talking about the Badger game last night.
Yeah. So this was, I think, from Thomas's original post.
There you go.
And I did not see this, so you're going to have to. Did you see this?
I saw a clip. I didn't see the full thing, but I did see that there was a clip of Bango at the game, and he's of course the Bucks mascot. It's fun. It's fun. Bango does have some ups. Now he's helped, I think, a lot by that trampoline, but he's got some ups.
I thought Bango originally was Morningwood's other nickname. I got thrown off there.
Well, this is where, Bango actually gets his name. There's a little town that's close to La Crosse called Bangor. And so Bango is actually, I'm just spinning this narrative right now, is actually from Bangor. And, that's probably why he's so aggressive. Bangor, a couple of years ago, won a state football and a state basketball championship in the same season. So we'll come back in just a few here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. And when we come back, Chad, we'll update this morning's poll question. What do you guys think about Jim Leonard's next step? And we've got to get into the great GOAT debate. Giannis will be there at some point. But right now, there are 3 or 4 guys that stand up above the rest, at least according to me and Chad. We'll get into that. Stick around.
Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. You know, I think it'd be easier to be a morning person if it started around noon.
Yeah.
Now, here's your host, Dave Kearney.
Chad, I don't know what we ever did to like sink ourselves into the morning routine. I've been a morning guy for so long now. I don't know if I'd ever be able to go back to being like a full-time late night guy. Could you ever switch back to that? Like go all late nights?
Yes.
Okay.
Not graveyard. Swing shift. I like a swing shift, the 3 to 11, something like that. Graveyard, not good. Not good for you.
No, it's
very
not.
bad for your internal clock.
Well, hell, even getting up at 2:45 to do a 6 morning show was not easy. I mean, after 10 or 12 years, and I've told this to everybody that's probably listening and watching right now, that was one of the big reasons for me to step away from that particular show, is just because it was really physically taxing. And after 10 to 12 years of doing that consistently, and considering the 10 to 12 years that we've had over the last 10 to 12 years, boy, I felt like those had been magnified by about 10. I was just wondering if you could ever go back to a later shift, because I still seem to flame out about 10 o'clock. That still seems to be about Dave's number.
Yeah, I'm usually in bed by 9:30, something like that. Yeah. I need my 8. I need at least 8. So Joey Miller, speaking of, if you look at the bottom down here, go to betus.com.pa, use promo code Carnival, and then possibly jump on what Joey Miller's saying. He says Jazz money line is free tonight versus the Warriors. Curry, Wiggins, Green, all 3 of those guys are out. And the Jazz are playing really, really well.
Yeah, the Jazz are playing really well. That's interesting because I hadn't really seen what that money line was. Let me give that a look here. So Jazz, and we've got Jazz and Warriors money line. Right now, I'm just seeing that the Jazz are favored by 7.5. The total on this one opened at 239. Now is down to 233.5. I'm not finding a money line on this, but I'll check this out. Okay, we'll take a look at that. The thing about money line for me, and Joey, this is something that we should probably talk about too. You're really having to lay so much money for a favorite to win and cover that it doesn't make a ton of sense on a per unit base until you're betting a lot of money. Like our friend Floyd Mayweather in Vegas will bet $1 million to win 100,000. Because it's essentially like a free $100,000, right? You're picking somebody that's minus 1,000 or something like that. But I wouldn't make a play on the money line unless I was absolutely gifted a free play, only because the value proposition wouldn't be there. I would take a look at Utah, though, minus the 7.5. I would do that anyways, almost, Chad, because of the fact that the Warriors are just not a very good team on the road this year. They're not. They haven't won a lot on the road at all this year. And Utah, say what you will, they were supposed to be in the doghouse of the NBA's Western Conference. They're one of the best teams in the Western Conference. They get rid of Mitchell, who had 47 against the Lakers last night. They get rid of Gobert, or 43, excuse me. Get rid of Gobert, who's doing whatever he's doing in Minnesota. And yet the Jazz are playing really good basketball. And Danny Ainge, listen, tip of the cap to Danny Ainge, because once again, this guy got a haul for the players that he sent away, much like he did in Boston for an aging Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce. And what wasn't it even Jason Terry? Who else did he send? He sent Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and there was another guy they shipped out. Anyways, he ended up fleecing the Nets for multiple picks, and that's what he got back for both Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. And this Jazz team is in incredible shape for the next 5 to 7 years.
Danny Ainge kind of has a history of this, and it actually started back in, if you've ever heard this story before, when he was still a player with the Celtics. He went to Red Auerbach and said, Red, this is what you need to do. You need to trade Larry Bird and Kevin McHale.
Are you serious?
He did. He actually mentioned that to, and of course, Red Auerbach was, he was old school, and he was loyal to his guys. He said, get the fuck out of my office, basically. But his wheels were turning even when he was still a player.
Wow.
And some of the moves that he's made initially, when you first see them, like this one that happened, you're like, this is ridiculous. So pretty much Utah's just giving up the season. And now look at him. He's a genius. The guy's a genius when it comes to, this kind of maneuvers. You got to give it to him.
You really do. And the entirety of the Utah Jazz front office and organization has been reshifted in the last couple of years. Dwayne Wade is now a minority owner of the Jazz. Bringing Danny Ainge aboard was something of a boon. I was unsure how they were going to be able to swing that, but you got to give Danny Ainge a lot of credit, because he's not turned a Jazz team around, but he has helped them stay relevant in a season in which many thought they were dead in the water. Chad, let me update this morning's poll question at the Sports Carney on our Twitter feed, also on our Facebook group page, where thank you guys and gals so much for continuing to grow the Sports Carnival group page. We are growing fast, and it's all thanks to you. The question we have this morning, Jim Leonhard leaving Wisconsin after all, what do you think is next for the former Badger star and coach? Is it the NFL? Is it a college head coaching position? Or is it a college coordinator spot? Chad, you had earlier said college coordinator. On our Twitter feed now at the Sports Carney, 50% of votes are coming in for college coordinator. The NFL's getting 35.7% of the nods, and college head coach gets the remainder, 14.3%. On our Facebook group page, little bit different. The NFL's getting 52% of the votes, while college head coach and coordinator are tied with 24% apiece. It's going to be interesting. It does seem, and we've gotten this from one of our audience members, it does seem that Tressel has been hired officially now, Mike Tressel, as the defensive coordinator for the Wisconsin Badgers. So that move has been made, at least according to one of our audience members. That was Morning Wood.
I would say this, after Leonhard said that he was going to stay, and now that all of a sudden this switch, if it was one of the others, if it was going forward or moving up, in other words, if he did get a head coaching job in college, or if he did get a coordinator job in the NFL, that would have been announced first, and then he would have left. The fact that he left the way he did kind of lends me towards what Morning Wood was saying, that obviously he had an objection to the position he was going to take or the defense that they were going to utilize within this system, and that's why he left. Otherwise, you wouldn't just leave this way, I wouldn't think, after first saying that you're staying. Does that make sense?
That makes complete sense, and I think that, yes, based upon the reporting, and again, we can't besmirch the great name of Morning Wood, Kyle Wood, and his reporting mechanisms, but based upon that reporting, I would have probably made the same decision if I were Jim Leonhard, because what you find is that you're really going to be diminished in your scope and in your influence. And if that's the case, well, what does that, again, build for your resume? So I guess my other question, and I'd love for our audience members to just fire away with this, how good of a defensive coordinator is Jim Leonhard then? That's what I would like to know next, because the Badgers have been okay with him as defensive coordinator. They've never been the nation's top defense. The Badgers have surprisingly put in players to the NFL draft, though, that I didn't think would make it there on defense, especially. And, that's a credit to Jim Leonhard, I would suppose, in some ways, but he hasn't been the D coordinator for Wisconsin for all that long either. So I'm just curious then, from you guys and gals, how good of a defensive coordinator is Jim Leonhard really? I'll take your word for it. I want to be about Jim Leonhard because he's so much about the University of Wisconsin. So I get that narrative and that pull, but maybe he's just got some growing left to do, right? And Luke Fickell saw that. Possibly the university. I mean, Barry Alvarez and whomever is the brain trust now of Wisconsin making these hiring decisions, they had to take that into consideration too, right? This isn't like a move that's made in a vacuum with no prior thought. They had to think about that. So who knows? Maybe Jim Leonhard's just not as great as Badger fans were hoping he would be right off the jump. I mean, that's a possibility too.
Yeah, a lot of times, you get fans that have a love affair with certain people, and it becomes more of an emotional decision or emotional reaction than it does a practical one.
Sure. Sure. No, that makes a ton of sense. It's kind of like when, the Minnesota Vikings made a trade for Herschel Walker, who, ended up costing them an entire franchise and giving Dallas, 3 Super Bowls. Maybe it's like Eric from La Crescent checking in here saying Danny Ainge is the fleecer in chief. Damn it, twice the Wolves now. The Jazz have all their picks and a better win-loss record. Yeah, you know what? That's a thing too. It happens in sports. Sometimes you get tricked.
Danny Ainge was an agitator on the court, and he's an agitator off the court. He is a bee in your bonnet. He's a thorn in your side. He's one of those guys. He's a pesky little bastard.
Yes, he is.
But he's effective. He's effective. He was one of those guys that I was always grateful that he was on my team, the Celtics. And I followed his career when he went to Portland and other places. And he was that way everywhere he went,
Wasn't he also on that Phoenix team with?
He was on the Phoenix team too. Yep.
It ended up making that championship run with Michael Jordan. Yep. Look, Danny Ainge was a very good player, and a lot of people forget that Danny Ainge was actually like a legit 6'4", 6'5". So he was not small guard.
An athlete. He was actually drafted in the Major League Baseball too. He was on the Blue Jays, I believe.
Which it's something, because I want to break our GOAT debate down now. I'd love you to put that slide up. But at some point in the future, I want to do this. I've talked about this before in previous shows, but I want to do this with you at some point. Looking at baseball prospects that have gone on to great pro careers in other sports, and is baseball and the prospect of being a good baseball player almost the biggest determiner of how your athletic success could be? Because I'm thinking of Elway, I'm thinking of Danny Ainge, I'm thinking of Russell Wilson, I'm thinking of Kyler Murray, I'm thinking of a lot of different players who have been baseball guys, but have gone on to great success in other sports.
Yeah.
Not many in the NBA, except for Danny Ainge. That's one of the few that I know that have ever been, drafted in Major League Baseball and also drafted in the NBA. But yesterday, we got into a conversation off air about the GOAT in the NBA. And this is something that probably will never be settled because we're all going to be era.
Yeah.
Right. And we're all going to be era biased. But Chad, you brought up a really interesting point about LeBron James and what he didn't have that Kareem had, what he didn't have that Michael had, what he didn't have that even Kobe Bryant had. So why don't you give me your supposition and then we'll kind of roll from there.
Well, first of all, I've gone back and forth on this, and I've always been a pro Kareem guy to be number one. I'll give you my list really quick. I have Kareem, Michael, LeBron, Bill Russell, Magic, Wilt, Larry, Shaq, Kobe, Tim Duncan, and Oscar Robertson are my top 11, if you will. And that in that order for me, but I'm willing to adjust that. And the more that I watch LeBron and understand, where he came from, and what he's doing now, and he's going to surpass Kareem as far as points total. And when you look at the championships and the MVPs, and his resume is there, he is the only guy that I can think of that hasn't really had a significant coach in his career. I mean, I can't think of a guy that is a Hall of Fame caliber coach that a lot of these other guys have had. Kareem, obviously, with starting off with John Wooden, who may be one of, if not the greatest basketball coach of all time. Michael Jordan had Dean Smith. Bill Russell had Red Auerbach. Magic had, Pat Riley. So did Kareem. You look at some of these guys, Wilt Chamberlain at Kansas had Fog Allen, who is the father of coaching. When you look at Kobe, he had Phil Jackson. I mean, you just go down the list. LeBron has really been by himself, and out of high school, he didn't have the college experience. Imagine if LeBron would have, even when he went to college for 1 or 2 years and had Mike Krzyzewski or somebody like that, Roy Williams or somebody like that, to coach him up at that age where he would be. So I think that you have to look at that and go, do you move him up higher just from that point of view? I mean, he could probably be number one on a lot of people's lists just from his resume. But when you add that factor in there, and consider that he did most of this on his own without a lot of tutelage, and he is a student of the game, and I appreciate that part of his game as well. It makes me kind of reevaluate my list a little bit. I'm going to keep my list where it's at, but I'm definitely willing to listen to an argument of him being the GOAT.
Yeah, oh gosh, and you made just so many great points there. I'll start off with the coaching thing because that's what really piqued my interest. I went through the annals of LeBron James's coaches through his entire career, and you've got the who's who of who's not important in NBA history as it's his coach, Mike Brown. Okay.
Yeah.
You've got a guy that was coaching in Europe. I can't even remember where this fucking guy is now. The Cleveland coach that got fired, Tyronn Lue, who is, I guess, a good coach now because he coaches the Clippers. Then you've got a couple of also Rands. Eric Spoelstra is the only real
big name,
time coach that I could look at and say, wow, he was coached by a good coach there. And listen, when we break down that particular narrative, and this is just to do with the coach equaling player greatness, LeBron had his greatest stretch of his entire career with Eric Spoelstra. They went to 4 consecutive NBA championships and won 2 of them.
Yeah.
He had his greatest stretch as a basketball player under the tutelage of Eric Spoelstra, and then really vis-a-vis the overall management of one Mr. Pat Riley, who coached both Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who we're seeing on the screen here, as well as Magic Johnson and, a number of other greats, Patrick Ewing. But I think that when you look at the coaching element of it, there is something to say. I'm going to give you my quick, top players here, because I don't have, there's some differences in orders, but I've got Kareem number 1. He's still, for me, the number 1 player of all time. If he would have been allowed to play as a freshman in college, he would have won 4 national championships. I think it was Rick Hamilton said yesterday, if he would have come out of high school like LeBron did, the scoring championship thing would have been over, decades ago. He'd always have had it. But I've got Kareem, MJ, LeBron, Kobe, Wilt, Magic, Bird, Duncan, Hakeem. And then I start to have a little bit of open space. I could throw Shaq in there. Dirk Nowitzki gets a place in that particular spot when we start to get in and around those ranges. Charles Barkley, of course, is there for me.
Steph and Giannis, I think, are creeping up into that realm as well.
If Steph Curry were retired right now, I would elevate him I'd probably elevate him over Hakeem Olajuwon. I'd probably elevate Steph Curry over Olajuwon right now because he's got 4 championships, right? If he was retired right now. And Giannis, when he hangs it up, he's going to be in this list, and he might even be in the top 3. I just, for my money, I still look at what Kareem did, the most dominating shot that's ever been invented in NBA history. The fact that in this NBA, and we can talk about it being a guard league all we want, and that's fine. You can't teach tall. And the tall guys are still beasting out over everybody else. Look at what AD was doing until he decided to puss out last night versus Cleveland. Look at what Giannis does on a nightly basis. Sure, you can get smaller guys to do that, but over a career, it's really hard to have small guys put up those kinds of numbers consistently. And I think of Kareem's impact on the game, the defensive prowess that he had. Shit, they didn't even count blocked shots when he was coming in the league for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
They didn't have a defensive player of the league at that particular time. Jabbar was so dominant. He made Wilt Chamberlain look like an okay player. I mean, they had some good battles, but Jabbar, dude, he was the man. And I think for Wilt Chamberlain, yes, he had battles against Bill Russell, and Bill Russell won more championships. But in the head-to-head matchups, Wilt Chamberlain dominated Bill Russell. It's just Bill Russell's team was always so much better than Wilt. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar kicked the ass of Chamberlain up and down the court so many times. It was like, okay, that guy's just better. Now, Michael Jordan, absolutely. Kobe Bryant, to me, because of the following in Michael Jordan's footprints, you got to consider it. But to your point about LeBron, and if you're just joining the program right now, Chad he came up with a really good angle here. LeBron's been coached by nobody good ever. And the one time he was coached by somebody really good, he went to 4 straight championships.
And he hasn't always been surrounded by all the great pieces either. You know what I mean? He's been kind of a one-man show for quite a while. And again, you go back to that Miami team when he was surrounded, by Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade and some of those guys. That's his most dominating teams that he was on. Not only did he have a great coach, but he had good pieces around him.
Yes.
When you put all that together, I mean, again, I think once he retires, maybe it'll change a little bit. I could easily see myself in the future changing my list a smidge and putting him at the top. I could see that happening.
I could see it happening too. And God, it pains me to say this because LeBron just passed Magic Johnson for whatever 6th place on the all-time assist league.
I know. It's just
he's going to pass Kareem for number 1 on the all-time scoring list. The guy's going to end up retiring with over 40,000 points, 10,000 rebounds, and 10,000 assists. That's never going to be done again in the history of the NBA.
No.
Like never.
No.
All right, stay tuned. We'll come back, wrap up some shop here on this morning's Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
This is Tailgating Tales with Bert Kowalski. Episode 22. There'll be no toilet wine before it's time. It was late September of '92. The Bengals are in town and managed to take out Packers starting QB, the Magic Man, Dan Majkowski. Enter stage left, and then fresh-faced Brett Favre, who engineers a beautiful fourth-quarter comeback to beat Cincy 24-23. It began a 15-year bromance with the state of Wisconsin and cheeseheads worldwide. Meanwhile, I'm in the Lambeau Field parking lot, where I've enjoyed every home game since I was knee-high to a Milwaukee's best tall boy. This is where the tale takes a twist. Majkowski's out, the pack is in jeopardy, and I'm out of beer. Lucky for me, Lou Three Fingers Nelson, who did a stretch in Joliet, always had a fresh batch of toilet wine brewing in his mini-winnie. I was 6 cups in and barely coherent when Favre threw that TD to Kendrick Taylor for the win. God bless Favre, and God bless Three Fingers Toilet Wine.
And Favre put it right on the line. A perfect pass, a perfect catch by Kendrick Taylor.
Back to the action live from the Trauma Center studios. This is the Sports Carnival. You know, I love this quote from Mark Twain. The more I learn about people, the more I love my dog. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, another great quote from Mark Twain. The coldest winter night I ever spent was a summer day in San Francisco. And San Francisco, Chad, yesterday didn't get Baker Mayfield. We haven't talked about this. Were you surprised at all to see the Rams claim him as opposed to the 49ers?
I was actually relieved. I was like, we not only did we not pick him up, we stuck him in our own division on the Rams. You know what? That's their problem now. I think that Baker is a very talented guy, but he reminds me he's got a little Johnny Manziel in him. You know, I think what really put it over the top for me, and maybe it put it over for the Carolina Panthers, when he was headbutting dudes without a helmet. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 dudes. It was like 4 or 5 guys after that game. I can't remember if that was a Monday night, Thursday night. It doesn't really matter.
I think I remember that one. Yeah.
I'm like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with this guy. And then the other thing I was thinking, I was talking to my buddy at work yesterday. I'm like, man, I'm sure you don't think about it when you cash the check, but imagine seeing your face all over television, over every commercial, and you're not even playing. You're not even relevant as a player. I mean, he's all over the TV.
Yeah,
and
he was.
And he still is. He's part of the Heisman House, and, you know, he was doing other, you know, I still see those commercials, and I'm like, I'm sure, again, when he's cashing the checks, that doesn't matter. But he's just when you've been cut by the Carolina Panthers, it's like, wow.
Well, you got to get the money when and where you can.
No,
and
I get it.
Listen, Cleveland's an interesting test case for this because you mentioned Johnny Foosball, the chili dip and D-bag, and that was an unmitigated disaster that both you and I saw coming from 18 miles away. We knew that would flame out fast, and it did. But think about Brady Quinn. So when he came out of Notre Dame, got drafted by the Browns, he was on every commercial. I think it was Under Armour, maybe it was Powerade or whatever he had. He was early, and, you know, listen, Brady Quinn's a good-looking guy, great physique. I mean, markedly different looking than a guy like Baker Mayfield, but equally as unimpressive in the NFL, right? But he had so many commercials. He had more commercials than he did NFL touchdowns. And listen, take the money and run while you can. But I agree with you. It's probably a little boost to the ego when you've got a statue in front of the University of Oklahoma. You're a Heisman Trophy winner. You were the #1 overall draft pick by Cleveland. Every single year since you've gotten into the NFL, you've been worse than you were your first year with Hugh Jackson as your head coach. And I'm glad that we're getting some run on this because I didn't know. I saw that Morning Wood mentioned that Wisconsin in 2021 was actually ranked #1 in defense. Okay. Jimmy Namath says Leonard had a top 5 defense for 4 years. Okay, fine. So the Badgers are a top 5 defense. That's cool. I didn't realize where they were at statistically. Is that in the Big Ten, fellas, or is this top 5 in the actual ranks of college football? We'll go ahead and say, Chad, that it's actual college football. Okay, so that means Jim Leonhard is a great defensive coordinator, which would make you think, I mean, if he's shepherding the number 1 defenses and top 5 for 4 years, that maybe Luke Fickell missed something here. But Morning Wood said that Coach Leonhard needs a run at a smaller school before he can come into like a Big Ten, an SEC, an NFL type program. Do you tend to agree with that in principle, that it should be a smaller school first, and then you make that jump up, similar to what Dion did with Jackson State, even though Leonard's not getting that job?
No, he's not. No, it probably more like, you're right, I forgot about Jackson. It's probably more like Grambling or somebody like that.
Yeah, he'll be down there.
A place like Grambling. Yeah.
Right in. He'll fit
yeah,
right in.
I would say that. And I think the other thing to think about is, generally speaking, when a new head coach comes in, they clean the house and they bring their own guys in. So the fact that he was even, willing to keep him says a lot about Fickell, in my opinion, because he recognizes what Jim Leonhard not only brings to as a coordinator, but as a leader for the team and what he meant to the team. So I think that says a lot about Fickell, but clearly there's some kind of issue there. And maybe what Morning Wood said is 100% accurate, which is sounding more and more like that between the coordinator title, which I'm sure offended his ego, and the fact that he wants to run a different style defense, which may be a bigger factor on that. It's probably the reason why he's leaving. And so, yes, I would say that more than likely he's going to end up doing, it's going to seem like a lateral move, in my opinion. He'll probably be a coordinator in college somewhere else. Who knows? Maybe the NFL comes calling, as our green and gold insider, Joe DeGuano, has said for quite a while. He's expecting Joe Barry to lose his job soon.
Yeah.
Maybe he at least gets an interview.
Well, he'd probably get an interview. I would caution the Packers, though, against, just hiring this guy because he's a Wisconsin native, right? Or played football at Wisconsin.
You can't do that. Yeah.
No, I would caution them against that. And Matt LaFleur, I mean, he has not made great picks on his staff. And I thought that Rich Bisaccia would be a great special teams coordinator. The Packers have been terrible on special teams once again this year. Go into our Twitter poll at the Sports Carney. College coordinator Chad is leading this poll right now by a wide margin. 55.6% of respondents here at the Sports Carney on Twitter say that will be the next up there for Jim Leonhard. 33.5% for the NFL, and the rest for the college head coach. I think that if it's going to be a college coordinator job, he'll probably go out of the Big Ten. It'll seem like a lateral move, perhaps. You're right, Chad, but I would say it would be out of the Big Ten. Now, if it's in the Big Ten, well, that'll give us a lot to talk about, because if Jim Leonhard takes a job inside the Big Ten and say he revitalizes a program like Northwestern or something, turns them into a top 5 defensive team. What if he goes to Minnesota and starts rowing the boat with PJ Fleck? Do you know how much these people out here would get fucking pissed about that? I mean, they would get fucking pissed about that. So we'll see. It's interesting to me because, again, we had just talked about the other day the fact that Jim Leonhard was, according to multiple reports, going to stay at Wisconsin. So we'll be tracking this and following it along. Before we head out of here today, Chad, I just make sure we remind folks again, if you're going to make bets, do it with money that you can afford to lose. Never bet more than you can. But go to betus.com.pa and sign up with the promo code Carnival. When you make your first deposit, you'll be prompted to put in a promo code, and also use the referral name Carnival when you're asked, how did you hear about BetUS? You're helping the show out when you do that. So we appreciate your patronage. And again, make your bets and make them legally here in the state of Wisconsin with BetUS. I also wanted to make this mention once again. I put this up on my daily play chat the other day, but starting next Thursday, the 15th of December, every single Thursday, I'm going to be joining John Papadopoulos on ESPN 105.5 right here in La Crosse, the Cooley region, as their new sports betting insider. I'll be giving you picks and analysis. I'm actually going to start. I'm actually going to start giving out some picks tomorrow on ESPN. You can hear those spots rotating on ESPN 105.5 between noon and 6 p.m. All right, and I'm taking a look, Chad, at one NFL game in particular for this upcoming weekend, as we have the Packers on a bye. There is one game that is sticking out amongst all others as a real value play. So tune into ESPN 105.5 tomorrow between noon to 6 and check out my new daily picks, or weekly picks, I should say. And then starting next Thursday with John Papadopoulos, we'll be going back and forth, and we'll be doing this all year round. So hockey, baseball, basketball, football, college, and pros, we're going to cover it all. Neil Duda, great to see your name pop up. He says, great commercial at the end of the first break. He's actually DJing a wedding Saturday at a winery. Wow. Okay, that sounds fun.
That does sound fun. That does sound fun. You know, speaking of Neil Duda.
Oh,
this is perfect timing. Thank you, Neil, for leading us into this. We appreciate it.
It's what we call a fucking transition, man. Segue in chief. Well, guys and gals, have a great rest of your Wednesday. Really appreciate you spending time with us again. Thanks to all of our incredible supporters, including the O'Neill Law Firm and Joe's Helping Hands Landscaping. We'll be back at it tomorrow morning, bright and early, 8 o'clock. See you then.